Hey everybody, welcome to Average Guy Opinions. I'm your average guy, John Corelli. I hope you had a good Martin Luther King Jr. day off. If you got the day off, I hope you are having a great day. If you didn't get any days off, hope you're doing well. So talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Day on my last video, I realized that I come from a pretty damn liberal family, and I actually have kind of a history of protest in my life. And I want to talk about that. This will probably be a two-parter because I have dabbled, I'm going to put it that way, in protest. I've never been a hardcore uh, protester, but my parents introduced me to it when I was young because they thought it was important to be um, civically and socially active. And so we would do that sometimes as growing up in the 70s and 80s, especially the 80s, fear of nuclear holocaust, stuff like that. I mean, we weren't, like I said, we weren't super into movements or anything, but if there was something going on downtown, sometimes we'd go join it. Um, but the 80s were a big protest decade. There are all kinds of things to debate about and fight for. Reproductive rights, um, nuclear proliferation, even save the seals and save the whales. There was an early kind of microcosm. Uh, how do I want to put it? Just zeroing in on a very small part of the environment, but recognizing the overall importance of that. We weren't really concerned with global warming yet, even though we should have known it was a thing. We weren't really looking at it carefully. Maybe it's because in the 80s we had a bunch of Japanese cars that had got pretty good gas mileage to them, and that was a movement that was happening. But I remember one of my first little protests that I went to was Save the Seals. It really was. I mean, it was, you'd see some of that footage of, some Norwegian dude clubbing a baby harp seal. It looks like a stuffed animal, and it was pretty horrific. And then you say, why are we clubbing this baby harp seal? Oh, for its fur, pretty much. And they would skin it and leave the rest there to either rot or maybe get eaten by scavengers. But it was pretty awful because we had invented fake fur. There are some things you need in this society and some things you don't. And most people had decided we don't need real fur coats from baby harp seals. And who knows how much that damages the food chain, right? Babies are often eaten because they're kind of I was going to say gullible. Not gullible, like you tell a baby seal a really bad joke and they're like, what, or you prank them somehow, but they're vulnerable, not gullible. But, babies are vulnerable. That's just a fact of the food chain, right? I mean, that's what happens. Often mothers or babies are killed during the birth process, which is rough, but they're animals. A hungry animal doesn't care, right? A hungry predator doesn't care if you're giving birth and is going to stand back and go, oh, that's so beautiful. No. They're going to eat you. So, having said that, I remember Seals Day is what it was called, or at least that was one of the songs. It was fun. We went to the Capitol building here in downtown Denver, and my parents went, and I went. And I don't remember if my two younger stepbrothers were there or not. They probably were, but it was a very, it wasn't a big deal protest. Most people were either into it or probably just laughed at us. But it was a big deal, like in terms of the production. There were bands there. I remember one guy. It was like a blues sounding band. It was just one of the few memories I have of that event. It was just big black guy on a guitar going, well, it's Seals Day, Seals Day. Yeah, and we all sang that because we're white people and we can do background vocals really well, apparently. So that was kind of fun and funny and a good memory. The other memory I have of the 80s and dabbling in protest was Rocky Flats. Now, for those of you who don't know what Rocky Flats was, Rocky Flats is it's on the road from West Denver to Boulder. There's a highway called 93, and it basically goes along the foothills into Boulder. And there was nothing out there. There's still not a lot out there, but there used to be nothing out there except for Rocky Flats. And what they did at Rocky Flats was they created the triggers for nuclear weapons. And so in 1980, I believe it was early on, there was a movement to encircle Rocky Flats. And the movement also, this is part of being part of the Unitarian Church, which was something my parents were into and I was into back then. We'd go on also camping trips with the church sometimes. You know, we go up to the mountains at a place called La Forêt, you know, and we just, you know, it was just kind of a getaway. And for those of you that know about Unitarianism, it's a very liberal, laid-back form of, I barely even call it a religion. It's more of a celebration of belief systems, honestly. I mean, sometimes I remember this when I was a kid going to church with my parents. They would do readings from the Torah, from the Quran, from the Bhagavad Gita, whatever the one, the Buddhist one is called, which I can't pronounce. Or no, that was actually the Hindu one I couldn't pronounce. But they would do different readings, and from the Bible, of course. And you would just learn different points of view and how different religions saw stuff. And that actually kind of sailed me into atheism, because like, these religions are saying the same thing a lot. Just be a decent human being. And that's why I came to not believe in a creator God, and it turned me into an atheist, which isn't a bad thing. I still had the basics of how to be a decent human being. I still do. That's why I always hate that whole, well, how do you have any morality if you don't believe in a God? I don't need a God to have morality. My parents are in charge of that. And your parents were too, by the way. And if you discovered God, fine, but whatever. Anyway, but the Unitarian Church was often behind these protests, and they were behind the protest, or at least our section of the protest. It really got widespread that encircled Rocky Flats. And Rocky Flats was a humongous, I don't know how many acres, but it was a huge plant. I mean, there's security there. It was surrounded by barbed wire fence, of course. It was part of the military and military industrial complex. And 10,000 people showed up and encircled that thing. It was really cool. We all held hands and we sang songs, and then there were people driving around with bullhorns calling us commies, but that wasn't very frequent. There were only a few. And it was never threatening. But yeah, it was interesting, and it was a big way to show that, hey, maybe, I don't know if one person can make a difference, but 10,000 certainly can make a statement. Because we were scared of nuclear holocaust, and that's why we got out there. I may have mentioned this in one of my last few videos, how, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but I'm going to mention it now. My mom, I remember in the early 80s, asking me, do you think we're going to make it to 1990? I go, yeah, I did. I was like, I was a kid, maybe I was ignorant, but I was like, I don't think the powers that be are that vicious or stupid or cut off nosy despite your facey that they would just end it, that they would just nuke it all, right? You know, it's funny, I went to see a movie last night, and this is kind of getting off the protest thing. It's called ISS, and the basis of the movie is kind of cool. It's the International Space Station, ISS, where Russians and Americans have combined, you know, have collaborated to run this space station and get information, do whatever, exploration. It was kind of funny in the trailer, by the way. It said it's a collaboration between United States and Russians. And I was like, who edited this trailer? United States and Russia, or Americans and Russians, but not United States and Russians. It sounds stupid. It sounds like a 7th grader wrote it. Edit, you adults. Anyway, so then the premise is that nuclear war starts. And they show like they're looking from the satellite, and all of a sudden the United States is just glowing. And so then they get in a battle with the Russians to who's going to take over this satellite and maybe affect the war. But so that's what we were fearing. That's just like I said, that's just a dabble. That's how I got started in protest. This is going to be a 2-parter. Not going to make 20-minute videos anymore because people don't watch them. They're too long, and I understand that. So this will wrap up in a minute at 10. But those are some of my memories of protests, the SEALs, the whales, excuse me, you know, abortion rights, and trying to end nuclear proliferation, and my parents being there for the whole thing, and just showing, hey, this is how you can make a difference. Here's a group of people that can maybe at least say something, and it's going to get covered by the media, and it will hopefully maybe get in a few Congress people's, legislators' ears, and maybe we start really being sensible about nuclear proliferation. Of course, didn't end up that way, but it ended for now. But this will be a 2-parter. I want to talk more about some recent and not so recent, more racial Geez, protesting I've been involved in. It's early, and apparently my brain isn't working well. It doesn't work well in the first place. But there you go. Part two will be about that. Thanks for checking it out again. I appreciate you guys. Have a great day or whatever you're having, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.